Hello, welcome back. So the wheel well was fitted. Well, it was test fitted and it was taken out. And what I did is I drilled out all the spot welds that were over here, holding the last piece of plate that was in. And the piece that was sitting here, I drilled those ones out, went over here, drilled those, and then look on the other side. I drilled the whole way down, and here's the piece after I actually got all the spot welds drilled out. You see all when they spot weld, they just keep hitting it with the gun. There's no really any rhyme or reason. They just kind of put them in wherever. So that's the outside, the edge towards the wheel well, all the inside here. That's where it was fitted. So I drilled that out and cleaned them up. And the hardest part was the corner up in here, way into the side over here. This is actually, I'll show you on the inside. This piece here, and this piece and this one, all pinched together right here. So it was real tough to get the top part of it out of the way back inside here. So you'll just have to keep pulling, and some of the spot welds, when you weld them through, they don't go through right dead in the center, so they're off a little bit. So I took a thin chisel and I went underneath here and kind of knocked out the ones that I were underneath, and I just kind of went through underneath and then just popped them all out. Had to do that back here, a couple of them and everything. So what I'm going to do is, this is all crinkled and bent. I have an old hammer and dolly set. I'll show you how to do that or whatever, but to flatten this out, I never used it before, so we'll give it a try. So got that piece out. So then now this was open right here. This part was actually all gone. It was all rusted through and everything. There was a hole right here. So what I did is I made a template and bent it through. And now it's welded all along the side here, coming down over to here. So now this place, now it has metal, good metal again. And I also cut this up to there. There you go. So now I welded down through here. This is the original piece, the bulkhead that was there. So then I just made it up to, it actually overlapped it. It did a spot weld here. One of the spot welds I actually drilled out. I welded it back in. So now I just welded it around. So now I have someplace I can put the new wheel well on. So it actually is going to rest right on top of here, and I'll put spot welds through from the inside up into it. I welded over here. There's the replacement piece that I already put, so that's welded onto there. So it's starting to get some strength back through here again. So this is it might look real bad, but of course everything looks bad. So what I did is I actually cut out the whole glove box here. I guess you consider this a glove box, but it's not really a glove box. It's just an open space. But I cut this all out because this was just all completely paper thin. So I just cut it all out up to here where it's a little bit, has some thicker metal going around. So I'm just going to take a big plate and curve it so it matches the curve right here. And then bring it over to here, weld it along the back, weld it basically all four sides. And then I'm going to cut this piece out here, only a little bit. So if you look underneath, this is actually the door stop right here. So I don't want to move this or disrupt this, so I'm going to put a piece right underneath here and weld it right to it and keep this in the same position so it doesn't move, because I don't really need to take it out. So the next step is going to be fixing this with a new plate going across, and then I'm going to make a plate to cover this hole here. Make that I'm just going to close it off because it's never going to be a right-hand drive, so it doesn't really matter. So I'm just going to cover this hole up. Alrighty. Okay, we're back. I got this plate in. It goes that I just, like I said, I just slapped it underneath it and I just welded right across. I didn't even try to do a butt weld or nothing like that. So I just put it in there, took it across, welded it to here, Then I made a plate to go across from the back side to match back up to the new piece. And this, now it is super strong. It's not going anywhere. So I'm not even going to try to mess with this Swiss cheese right here. I'm just going to leave it. It's fine. It's perfectly strong. Nothing's moving it. It's actually, the more pieces I cut out and the more I weld in, it seems like the flexibility of the whole bulkhead is getting better as I'm going. So I'm very happy with how it's going so far. There's that. And now underneath, it is all welded in there. So I put some core seal inside here, all up inside the door jamb, because once I actually put in the footwell, this actually gets all boxed in and you don't never going to see the inside of this again. So it's best to do it now while it's all taken apart. So I'm going to go over, we're going to pull out the hammer and dolly set, and I'm going to show you a little bit of this, how I'm going to straighten this up. Alrighty, let's go on over. Okay, here's a hammer and dolly set that I got years ago, before there was even the internet, and there used to be, before there was Harbor Freight too, at least in the Pittsburgh area. They used to have these I used to call them Chinese tool shows that would come around. And it was just like a Harbor Freight, but it was like a traveling Harbor Freight show. So I bought this, I don't know how many years ago, probably 20 years ago. But basically you have these different dollies, you hold this in, and you hammer, you use a hammer. They're usually just flat hammers, or we have a little bow in them like that. And then you hit the two pieces of metal together, and it becomes your basically a portable hard surface to smack onto the flattened sheet metal. There's this one, it's got a different shape to it. This has a little different shape to it wherever you're working. This one, and see, it has all different shapes. So if you need to get in different areas or whatever. This one here, another one, hammer and dolly. You might see people use these things before on shows, but it's a nice little kit. It's got, that one's got a pointer, roll point on it, and that one's still flat, but, and this one, it looks like almost the same, looks the same as this one, a little bit different, but this is the hammer that I use. It's a regular ball peen 12-ounce hammer. I've been using this for years for everything, whenever I'm doing body work. Whenever I'm welding pieces, because a lot of times you have a gap in between sheet metal, you start welding and it'll start warping and bending a little bit, and by the time you get to the end of the sheet metal, it's actually, we'll pretend it's actually kind of sitting up like this. It'll bend up a little bit. So what you do is you take a ball peen hammer, this one here that I always been using, just use a tip of it and you kind of bend it back down. Like if it's sitting like this, you just kind of hit it and it'll bend down around the welds and everything. And then you can do a nice good weld right across. So I've been using this for years, and I ball peened every single car I've had so far. So anyways, I'm going to give this a try. Let me set it up over by the car and we'll take a look-see. All right, so here we are. We want to flatten this piece of metal here. So you kind of hold this underneath, and you can kind of, I don't know if you can see, you probably can't even see it, but hold it. Okay, so look and see how much bigger. I just got done welding this and making a patch for this. It was just a simple arc that was coming around like this. And as I was cutting around, more and more and more, it was just rust and thin metal. It was almost like Swiss cheese. So a simple repair like this could end up being something huge like this, like a big, huge patch or whatever. So I put it in from the back, and I welded around all around the edge like this, and it didn't blow through at all because it was nice, thicker metal as I was moving out. So I ended up cutting this huge slot, this huge piece here. And the more I just think about when I see have to make a horrible patch, it kind of looks like this, and this all just kind of looks bad. This, I'm saving this from the junkyard. This was going to be going to the scrap heap. It was never going to get any love for the rest of its life. So when I see I have to do something like this, I feel bad, but then I also feel good, because that means this guy's going to be back around for a long time, and it's going to be treated good. So when I see I have to do something like this, I get angry, but I just think about, I'm saving it. So it's going to be back together someday, one way or the other. Okay, so another piece right here was this hole here was where the wiring harness, which is here, that went into the frame and went the whole way into the back. So since I put the rear cross member on, it doesn't have a hole for it, and the wires were in the way, so I ended up just pulling the whole wire bundle out, and I'm just gonna put it together and put it on top of the frame rail. Just lay it on top of here, because here's the fuel lines that go towards the back. It's the feed and the return for the diesel pump. So I'm just going to lay it right beside this. This goes the whole length of the frame back to the gas tank, so, and that's where the wires need to go. So I'm just going to lay it here along with the brake line. The brake line just lays on top. It's supposed to be in a clip like that, holding it in place, but I might put some clips in there someday or whatever before, way down the line, until I actually get on the road. So I have this extra hole where the wires were coming through. So I made a little patch with a piece of cardboard, back of a beer box, of course. So then I'm just gonna put a patch over top of that hole, because then nothing's gonna go in there, no water, no nothing. So I'm gonna cut this out of a piece of metal and just weld around there and close off that hole, because I'm not gonna use it anymore. Alrighty. Okay, so here's the little patch panel. All I did was trace it over 14 gauge steel, the same as I was fixing the frame with. So I'll lay that over top of it, center it on there, and then I'll weld around it and clean up the weld that's around it. So, and that hole will be plugged. All right. Okay, so I got this plugged up now, welded all fully around. I ground down the weld a little bit, kind of cleaned it up. And then up here, I finally finished up and I put the top plate on. So this is all closed off, and this rain gutter is what I'm calling it, or lip that goes the whole way across, now is all cleaned up and smooth. It's all welded together. This is pretty smooth for the seal to go on whenever I buy a new one. Here's the old one. It's just a piece of rubber. It's not very fancy or nothing. It's just a piece of rubber that gets crushed in there. So it'll have a nice smooth surface now. I welded all around here, around the edge. So this is all closed up now. And before I closed it up, I dumped some more core seal down in there. And so it was pouring out everywhere. So I think it's safe inside. So that's capped off, so I'm happy with that. So basically now, I can now test fit the actual footwell. And the thing that takes the longest is that you will go to put in one panel, which is great. It's easy to do when you think about it. But then everything around it falls apart when you're welding and you're trying to put all the pieces together. So it takes like 3 times longer than it would just to do a normal footwell. So anyways, I'm going to test fit a footwell in there and see how it goes. Okay, so here's the test fit of the footwell. One thing I had to do is I trimmed this corner off. It came to a sharp point, and it was hitting off of this spot right here, and it wouldn't let me get in there real tight to this side. So I have to actually squeeze it and hold it when I go to weld it, so it gets into, so I can get those spot welds behind there. And also the tip part here, I cut that off too of the floor, replacement floor, so then they would so it would fit up in that corner a little bit better. But you can see they line up. These all line up here. Everything for those spot welds. I'm gonna have to get assistance, but push from the other side and I'll push from this side and I'll fill in these spot welds here again. And make sure, remember, that these are not spot welds right here. Remember, that's for the throttle. I'm gonna have to drill those two holes out once it gets final welded in place. So these holes were already here. I don't know what they're for, but I'm going to use them for spot welds. And then I'm going to put a few more down here. And I probably will put a couple welds up at the top just for good luck, just to keep it in, not from moving. So then also here, the two bolts, look at them holes actually line up. That's where it bolts onto this support and helps hold the bulkhead in place. Then it attaches to the frame. So look at those actually line up pretty close, dead on. I'm really happy with that. I'm really surprised that lined up perfectly. So this is the side panel that closes it off. I'm gonna put some holes through here for some spot welds. You can see if I push it forward, push it back, it lines right up in there. It comes down, there'll be more spot welds onto the bottom. So then here I'll drill holes for spot welds to weld it in against the door jamb, the door pillar. And then this side here, let's see, I get a good shot of it. This here, I got to trim the top of this, the inside of here. I got to trim the top where it meets up, with this panel that I replaced. So I got to trim it off a little bit so it can get underneath here, so it'll line straight up with the door pillar here. And I'll do some more spot welds on the inside. I'll put the holes here and then weld it to the door pillar. And the bottom, it doesn't get any at all. Okay, so I got it test fitted in there exactly how I want it, how it should be. I was wrong with up here. It's talking about how I needed to trim this piece off. I actually needed to trim this back piece that goes back through here so I can slide this up as far as I can to get against this surface right here. Because before, if I just trimmed the top of it, it would have been sitting down here. And you can see, move the light. You kind of see how there's the one panel here, another panel here, and then the door, the footwell part. See how it overlaps here? You can't really tell very much. But let me show you on the original one. I mentioned this in another video. See how the footwell here overlaps this piece and then this piece right here. So I actually have it the same as the original. If you can barely even tell, because I ground the welds down, but it's sitting right here is the one, and the other one in this one. So what I had to do is actually cut, let me rearrange here, cut this piece over here to make it so I had more space to slide this up the whole way. So now it's slid up the whole way. This gives me a gap down here of about a finger, finger wide or whatever. Oh, the clamp's in the way. But you can see I have it slid up the whole way it's supposed to be. So that actually gives you a gap underneath here where the footwell is, and the bottom of the foot door pillar here. So it comes across, comes right to there, and it's looking like it's pretty even with this and this. So when you put your floor pan in, it gets bolted down. It'll be straight across to it over here. So you can kind of see the gap here. It comes right over to there. So I'm thinking that's in the right location right here. So we're all good there. And I actually, you look up underneath, this piece here that I added on, I actually made it too long. So I actually cut off, I don't know, maybe about a 1/4 of an inch or 3/8 of an inch off of this to make it shorter, so I could take the, whoops, so I could take the floor when I take it, and I could push it up inside there. Once I have this pillar on this side, then I can push it up into place and underneath the metal that's over here, so it can slide up underneath there. So it's all lining up again. There are all the holes and everything. I marked where I'm going to do spot welds, or I'm going to punch holes through. And punch holes, and clean. So I got this. I'm just going to clean this all up over here on this. Take all this coating off, the primer, and punch holes down through here too. Okay, I'm going to go and take it all apart and get all the holes punched and everything. Okay, we're over at the workbench, and you can see here I got some marks on there, and that's where I want to do my spot welds on there. And drill, well, I got to put holes in there to put spot welds in, which is basically a plug weld. So I got an air tool, flange tool. It's from Harbor Freight, runs off of air, and it has it can punch holes for spot welds, or it can put a flange on the end of a, if you want to do a lap weld on something, it'll crimp it and put a little bend in it, a little curve in it. So I'll show you how it fits. What you do, you take it, line it up straight about where you want that hole to be. Get it square on there. One little flick, and there it is. There's a hole for a spot weld. And that's a 3/16 hole. So I'll do another one here. Just kind of line them up. I try to put the tool in as far as possible and square it up. And that's how easy it is. See them holes? Perfect 3/16 holes for a spot weld. Punches all the way through. Easy greasy. Okay, Footwell is officially welded in. Welded it all along the side here. Welded, actually, I did plug welds on this side and welded also along the edge here. And welded up underneath a little bit. Come over this side, you'll see where most of the welds were done. Did it along the top part here. All the spot welds I drilled out are over here. And then I did plug welds, which is spot welds, but I also did these welds too, because I always do these little welds and spot welds because I can never get, which is called actually a plug weld. They're not spot welds, but plug welds, I can never get them to stay good. So I just do welds along the sides too, just to make sure. So it's welded here, welded all along the side, welded all down there. That was a tight squeeze down through there. That was a pain in the butt. Big shout out for my son coming down and helping me. He'd push on one side while I welded on this side. So it is all together in one piece now. It's not going anywhere. And I put the 2 bolts in that hold the footwell in. It doesn't hold it in, but it stabilizes the bulkhead, and it is literally completely stable. It's not even moving whatsoever now, since those 2 bolts are holding it. If I loosen up 2 bolts, then you can kind of move the bulkhead around. As soon as you tighten that down, the whole thing isn't going anywhere. Plus it has the bolt down on the bottom too, but still it's staying in place. So this side is officially done. I'm going to put some seam sealer on there on all the seams, so just so we don't get wet feet. And but this side is completely done. I'm going to do the other side. I probably will just show it whenever it's finished in the next video, because it's not much different than this besides you have your foot pedal holes. But anyways, also down here I did plug welds, and then I did my little welds here just to make sure it doesn't go anywhere. Oh, and also there's a little brace that goes right here. I'll show it in the next video. It's nothing really important. I've actually seen guys not even put it on before, but I'll make a new one come down. It's supposed to just a little brace, angle brace that comes down. So I am super, super happy with the whole thing. That is done and over with on this side. And I'm just amazed that I made something from nothing and got it all done, and that I can actually hang a door on here and it won't fall off. Because this one, if you remember in the last couple videos, this wasn't even here. This was all gone. So the door had never, since I've got it, ever hung on the passenger side. It only hung on by the top 2 bolts. So super happy. This side's pretty much done for the bulkhead. Like I said, I'm going to go to the other side next. And super, super happy with how it turned out. Excellent. Also, I ended up not putting bolts in there. I ended up not welding nuts on. I can, actually there's so much space underneath there that I can just put a bolt and a nut when I go to do the floor pans down. Okay, thank you very much for watching. Hopefully you stayed to the end. Like, subscribe, share, and all that jazz. Thank you very much. Have a good one.